Okay, let's dive in. We're doing a deep dive today into, well, a really dramatic natural disaster that's unfolded recently over in the Swiss Alps. A whole village tragically buried by a collapsing glacier. Now, this deep dive is based entirely on the stack of articles and press releases you shared with us. And our mission here is just to quickly cut through all that, get right to the heart of what happened, why it happened, and the immediate consequences. We'll pull out the most important facts and insights just for you.
And, these reports from the Valais region, they really offer a stark illustration, I think. You see these complex, incredibly powerful forces at play in mountain environments. What's really striking, reading the details here, is how these changing conditions can lead to just catastrophic events. Even when, scientists had actually seen warning signs, the material lays out a pretty clear chain of events, starting from subtle shifts in the landscape right up to this, well, overwhelming display of natural force.
Right, and the event itself. Wow. As is captured in these reports, it sounds just unbelievably powerful. Happened on Wednesday, high above the village of Blatten. The Glacier, this massive chunk of ice carrying tons of rock and debris, didn't just slide. The descriptions make it sound like it roared down the mountainside, just obliterating everything in its path. You've probably seen some of the viral video footage they mentioned. Reports compare the cloud that resulted rock, ice, dirt rising up to something terrifyingly like an atomic bomb cloud. The scale was just immense. The material says nearly the entire glacier collapsed. They're calling it a gigantic landslide, and it buried most of the village of Blatten. Try to picture this: a deposit of ice and rock dozens of yards thick, stretching for about a mile or 2 kilometers, just lying there in the valley now. One specialist quoted in the articles, they didn't mince words, calling it the unthinkable, the catastrophic, worst-case scenario.
Yeah. And what makes that catastrophic scale maybe even more significant is the context the sources give us about the scientific lead-up. See, scientists weren't caught completely off guard. Reports indicate they had predicted a likely disaster. Why? Because of increasingly frequent rock falls onto the glacier itself. Now, this foresight was absolutely critical. It allowed the authorities to evacuate the entire village, that's 300 people, back on May 19th. We even learned they airlifted sheep and cows out, which, it's a small detail, but it really highlights the success of that early warning, that swift action in saving lives. Now, here's where it gets really interesting scientifically. Unlike most glaciers these days, which are receding, right, the Glacier had actually been advancing for about a decade. And the reason, the reports explain, is that these constant rockfalls were adding weight, adding pressure to the ice, and the underlying cause of those rockfalls, melting permafrost. Simple as that, really. It increases the instability of the mountain face above. The permafrost in this specific area, according to these sources, has warmed by at least 1 degree Celsius in just the last 10 to 15 years. Before the collapse, a really staggering amount, 3 million cubic meters, that's nearly 4 million cubic yards of debris, had piled up on that glacier.
It's a mind-boggling amount of material. So, okay, turning to the immediate aftermath now and the situation on the ground that's described in these reports, the damage is, considerable, seems like an understatement. The valley floor is now this really precarious landscape. The Lonza River, which runs through that area, it's been completely blocked by all the debris. And a lake is apparently forming quite rapidly behind this dam of rock and ice. The sources highlight a major concern here. What happens with that accumulating water, and the river's flow? They're worried it could potentially lead to what they term a torrential lava flow if the river sort of breaches or overflows onto that massive, unstable deposit.
Yes, and based on how that term torrential lava flow is used in the reports here, in this non-volcanic context, it really seems they mean a sudden, incredibly powerful surge of water mixed with all that loose rock and debris. It's the potential for that kind of secondary disaster that they're clearly trying to anticipate and, if possible, prevent.
Exactly. And adding to that danger, there's the human toll, which is still being assessed. The material mentions one person, a 64-year-old man, has been reported missing. Tragically, the search for him had to be temporarily suspended because, as the reports really emphasize, the conditions in the disaster zone are just far too dangerous right now. The whole area is too geologically unstable for any kind of search or rescue intervention. At the moment, it's just impossible.
And looking at the official response, and maybe more importantly, the message coming from the community itself, the reports offer some important insights. You have press releases from the Valais local government confirming the scale of the collapse and the missing person. They also detail that significant resources are being mobilized. We're talking the Army, civil protection, bringing in specialized equipment like massive water pumps, excavators. They're basically ready to act as soon as it's deemed safe. The Swiss president's reaction, as reported, is quite empathetic, saying, it's terrible to lose your home. And the Swiss environment minister acknowledged the sheer power of nature here, calling what happened absolutely extraordinary and, quote, the worst we could imagine. But maybe the most powerful message, the one that really stands out from the sources, comes from the mayor of Blatten. At a press conference, he said, "We lost our village, but not our lives." He went on to say that the village is under the gravel, but we're going to get up, really emphasizing the community's solidarity and their strong will to rebuild, declaring that everything is possible. That contrast between the devastation and that spirit is, well, it's really striking.
It absolutely is. So, pulling all these threads together for you, just from the articles and the press releases provided, we see this clear documented chain, don't we? Warming permafrost leading to more rock falls, which then kind of uniquely caused a specific glacier to advance, ultimately resulting in its catastrophic collapse. But the sources also really highlight the incredible success, the importance of that scientific prediction and the timely evacuation and saving hundreds of lives, which is, a genuinely positive outcome amidst nature delivering what was literally described by experts as the catastrophic worst-case scenario.
And this leaves us with a really powerful thought to consider, I think, drawn directly from the language used right there in these reports. On the one hand, the sources paint this incredibly stark picture of physical destruction, right? Describing the village as being literally under the gravel, buried beneath this immense deposit of ice and rock. But then, layered right onto that physical reality, you have this defiant human spirit captured in the village mayor's words about rebuilding. So the question maybe to leave you with is, what does it truly mean to rebuild, as they discuss it in these sources, when an entire village is physically buried, inaccessible, really, due to nature's just immense power? It's a question that kind of goes beyond just the bricks and mortar, doesn't it? It touches on resilience, community, and the future for people facing the raw force of, a changing environment.